Morning, everybody. Please take your seats. All right, the October 10th Board of Directors meeting is called to order. First, I would like to ask our interpreters to explain how to access interpretation. Please go ahead.
Good morning. Announcement from interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon world and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis and interpretation and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Buenos días, aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación globo terráqueo y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples, who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, the Genyo, the Luiseño, the Cupeño, and the Cahuilla. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustices of the past. Now, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Michael, could you please confirm quorum?
We do have a quorum, Chair, with the cities of Carlsbad, Chula Vista, La Mesa, Santee, and Vista absent at this time.
All righty, let's move on to non-agenda public comment. How many do we have?
We have 3 in person and 3 online. If you are online, please raise your hand now. First up is allegedly Audra, followed by Michael Brando. Before that, for the purpose of civility in an orderly meeting, we kindly ask that you refrain from using loud, threatening, profane, or abusive language. Per our board policy, the amount of time allowed for each verbal public comment is determined based on the number of agenda items, the complexity of those items, and the number of persons anticipated to offer comment. This allows us to hear from as many people as possible and to complete our business while we still have a quorum. Based on those factors, the chair has determined that today's meeting, each member of the public will be allowed 2 minutes for their comments.
All right, so I was telling the executive committee that I'm tired of playing games and having my free speech impeded because the video is being messed with. I'm not stupid. I do appreciate you, Mario, coming over and talking to me, but I live stream, I post videos, I edit videos. To ask the county to what's happening because you're saying it's a technical difficulty. The county streams to YouTube Live and they don't use Zoom. The city of San Diego uses Zoom, but they stream live. You guys don't stream live. You upload your video and you're saying that it's YouTube that takes it because they're saying it's some kind of like denoising type of thing. That's BS because I do it all the time. And I'm tired of like excuses. And again, the county of San Diego at least admitted that they were told by county council to make sure that these pictures are not shown. So they zoom in on the camera and actually obstruct justice because there is sexual abuse that's going on. These children have been kidnapped, as I've told you over and over, by the county of San Diego. They are being held for ransom with a ransom that will never be met because the idea is to adopt them out. It is a business. You guys must understand that. So again, I'm giving you a second chance today to stop messing with the audio because last time even Lisa said, can you fix the mic after I'm done speaking? That's a freaking problem that you guys keep doing that because this is really That's the kind of stuff that takes place with CPS. They actually traumatize children. They're hiding sexual assault, saying that I am coaching a 3-year-old to report it, and saying that the mother is creating these allegations. So the fact that you guys continue to try and hide it, you're actually impeding Malaya Kanzaya from getting justice and being freed from
Thank
this
you.
terror.
Next is Michael Brando, followed by Truth.
It's been a while since I've been here, and I want to pick up on a theme I always bring up when I'm here, and that is the theme of trust. The theme of trust. I want to use an example. There's a politician, a City of San Diego Corporation city council person, who said this in response to something that happened with Cesar Javier. She said, "We should also treat each other with respect. We're not enemies of each other just because we have different ideas." Listen to that statement. This person, Monty von Wolpert, is actually lying in her statement because it's not about having different ideas. This is about a small, tiny minority of people who are trying to inject themselves into people's lives, into areas where they don't belong, and trying to tyrannize people. Now, I know it's popular these days to say, well, that's Donald Trump. Well, actually, it's all of them. It's Donald Trump, it's Joe Biden, it's the Republicans, it's the Democrats. The good news about this is no one is coming here to these meetings anymore to ask for trust or to look for trust, because people create that inside themselves, and that's how a new society gets created. I can't talk about the details of what I used to talk about right now because I don't have time, but the things that you were pushing about the COVID counterfeit pandemic is in this book. Is in this book. I highly recommend that you read this book. It's called Becoming Whole by Meredith Miller. How to prevent Stockholm syndrome and transcend darkness in your life and relationships. And she actually goes into the details of how political structures across the earth are self-imploding because people are catching on to what's going on and finding empowerment from within themselves. How good can it get?
Thank you. Next is Truth, followed by Consuelo online.
Cal Cities has this place looking beautifully empty today. I like Jack at the Inn instead of Mento. I found yet another admission of political union infiltration into this agency. From the State of California Employment Training Panel, quote, Gretchen Newsom has implemented efforts to turn San Diego red to blue at city and county levels and change leadership and direction at key regional agencies such as SANDAG and MTS. She facilitated the adoption of the nation's second largest project labor agreement at SANDAG, valued at $163 billion, end quote. I wonder why audit is going to address an investigation into really bad contracts today. At the last meeting, Kevin asked, why a bus instead of microtransit? The answer is private cost, reliability, and public cost. According to MTS, the total cost of each trolley rider is $3.53. Each bus rider is $5.86 to $6.50, while each microtransit rider is $66.34. Facts must continue to override feelings in government. Paloma, absent Paloma again, said, especially the Blue Line trolley needs bathrooms. Really, are there certain people that need bathrooms more than others? That sounds like a slap in the face to the Green Line users who can't even get working elevators. And a reminder of this abhorrent utterance.
Supportive of looking to Mexico and seeing if Mexico sets aside funding to wastewater infrastructure mitigation on their side.
She said, I am not supportive of that. She told everyone that she doesn't care about Imperial Beach. She doesn't care about San Diego County. She doesn't care about California. She doesn't care about this country. Because which country is the one dumping sewage? America does not need treatment plants on our side. Mexico does. When Paloma suggested IB should buck OME, it was but a pathetic excuse to not support SB 10. And so here's another piece of that conversation.
That's not putting us first. That's putting us last, Mayor.
Well, that's the decision for SANDAG to make.
Does that sound like a good response to you guys? Oh, we're going to let SANDAG decide if Imperial Beach matters. See, not everybody is the hero that they pretend to be. And so I hope that you guys are going to be the opposite of that. Don't say you're for something, be for it. Thank you.
Next is Consuelo online, followed by Blair Beekman.
Okay, Consuelo here. So first off, from the last meeting earlier, Becca shutting out the community, refusing to include the people in planning while getting paid. It's like, it's highly unethical. It's just more corrupt behavior from this agency. And sadly, none of us are surprised anymore. And, you know, you keep operating behind closed doors, making decisions that affect millions while pretending to engage the public. And the truth is, you don't want people involved. You want control, compliance, and silence. Okay, so now to my regular reminder. This is all a part of a much bigger picture. What's unfolding here isn't random. It's connected to the digital ID and surveillance grid, being quietly built under the guise of convenience, climate action, and safety. It's the fishbowl effect, where every move, every purchase, every interaction is monitored, cataloged, and controlled. I know some of you probably don't care or think this doesn't affect you, but you will care. This is not a threat, it's a fact. Once the people, the growing, awakening majority, realize how you put them in harm's way, they will hold you accountable. Your names, your votes, your decisions, they matter. And the people will see who stood for them or who stood for this agenda and who helped build their digital cage. So just get ready for that. It's coming. And gosh, I cannot wait for the media to be exposed, for these nasty, corrupt politicians to be exposed, and for you who
Thank
act like
you. Your
you
time
don't
has
know what's
expired.
going on.
Next is Blair Beekman, followed by Paul the Bold.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thanks for the meeting today. A good executive committee meeting talking about the future of how to practice our committee processes. I hope we could be working towards openness and accountability to remember those important concepts. It was very nicely mentioned that we work really good with Mexico on commerce issues, but we're not so great in working together on environmental concerns. Good luck how that conversation can be developed. I've tried to mention many times that the efforts we make towards technology openness and accountability, that it's a shared process. If we work on those sort of issues with Mexico, who has their own very good accountability practices with tech, I think that can help facilitate overall better conversations about the environment and other issues. It's definitely a way to help the process overall. So good luck to help the process of dialogue in ways to do that. It's nice to hear Mario talk about the tech issues around the border. He's concerned. It's nice. Thank you. I also wanted to mention that means that I think there's an importance that we don't have to be working towards over-militarization of our local communities. I think our local communities, in California at least, are doing a great job in working on issues of crime and such. They don't need the over-militarization. I hope the Trump administration can sit down and work with that more and understand that and not make it an ego contest. Good luck in those efforts from us in California to present that. And to conclude, boy, what else? Oh, to quickly offer, I'm very concerned that a Venezuelan opposition leader has been given the Nobel Prize when she practices basically thuggery and creates something that's death squads in her ideas of revolution. That's not the way to create revolution at all.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Next, last public comment is Paul the Bold.
Okay, Paul the Bold. You're basing a lot of your planning on greenhouse gases, as if this is the most important thing. However, when I look at all the costs of climate change, I see that most costs are not man-made. So we should be looking at these, not just telling ourselves, well, it's not man-made, so there's nothing we can do or should do about it. I'm here to tell you that we should. This is our planet and we should take care of the big things first, like wildfire, plastics which also poison us and everything else, and groundwater replacement. So here's my list. Natural causes: solar or cosmic radiation, volcanic gas release, groundwater movement, El Nino, ocean current movement, magma Earth's core movement, Earth rotation speed or wobble, otherwise known as Milankovitch cycles, tectonic movement, wildfire-caused gas release that puts back all the EOV, all the CO2 we save by EVs, natural increases in carbon dioxide concentrations during ice age cycles. Second, man-made causes. Industry, plastics manufacturing, EV BESS fires, mining, air pollution, water pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, waste generation, underground nuclear tests. Third, land modification or erosion, sea level rise, hurricanes or storms, landslides, earthquakes. So you should be focusing on reducing all causes man can influence, not just man-made. And as man develops
Thank you, Paul. Your
more-
time has expired. That concludes our non-agenda public comment, Chair.
Very good. We're on to board member comments at this time. Ms. Maxon.
Good morning. Thank you. The good news is it's the fall season, which is pumpkin season. And all throughout the unincorporated area, there are many pumpkin patches where the pumpkins are actually grown, not brought in, and families by the thousands come up into the mountains and out into the unincorporated area to enjoy the fall experience. The bad news is that this is also the height of wildfire season. And yesterday in Ramona, we had the Rancho fire. It was in the same location as the Witch Creek fire, almost the exact same location where it started. We lucked out. We did not have the combination of high winds, extra dry fuels, and high heat. But this is October, and that was just luck that we happened to have a monsoonal condition coming up from the south and tamping down what could have been a life-ending event for many of us, especially those in Ramona and those traveling through the area. I really want and need, not personally, on behalf of the unincorporated area and the rural highways that we drive, we need to speed up making evacuation routes viable and survivable. These fires happen. Yesterday, it was just luck that the components that go into a firestorm and not just a wildfire were not there. But that's all it was luck. We won't always be lucky. We weren't in 03 and we were not in 07 and we will not in the future again. There will be another firestorm and it will take lives. So focusing on getting that highway widened and get rid of the bottlenecks so that the thousands of people coming up, and they don't just live in the unincorporated area, they're coming from all over the county because the backcountry is a beautiful draw. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to follow up Board Member Maxon's comments. She often speaks about the unsafe part of the 67. Being my location is very far away from that. I don't drive it often, but last week I had a really good friend of mine whose wife was involved in a very serious accident. She was run off the road by people who were out there street racing. If it wasn't for those passerbys who stopped and assisted because her car had rolled down an embankment, pulled her out, and luckily enough, there was somebody in the passerbys who was a nurse who administered some first aid. She may not be here, and so I hope that SANDAG and Caltrans really does look at quickening the improvements to make the 67 a much safer place. And, we always feel like around this board, we hear things and they may not impact us directly until they impact us directly. And so I've always supported the thought of making the 67 safer, making anything out in the unincorporated in the East County safer. But this one really hit home, and I'm thankful that my friend's wife was unharmed, other couple bumps and bruises, and scared the heck out of him. So that's, I just want to make sure that Caltrans really does push on that. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Jones?
Thank you, Chair. One is just a housekeeping item. Could we make sure in the future, on our agendas, we have it, it says new business where it specifically says new business because it just has consent. And I've noticed this on a couple of them and I keep forgetting to say something and I just I just looked at it and went, oh, I forgot to bring that up. Anyway, that's a housekeeping item. And I too agree with the rural areas. We really need to make sure we're focusing on safe evacuation for all of those areas, Valley Center, Fallbrook, the 67, Ramona, you know, I talked about it a few times. I learned to drive on the 67, but I haven't seen much of an improvement on that. So just to make sure we're focusing on that, because when we do think about those roads, it doesn't, as Robin Maxon brought up, it's not just the actual people that live up there, it's also the people traveling through there and, you know, getting out and enjoying the nature up in the rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Sanchez?
Thank you. Just to bring up what we talked about a little bit at Executive Committee about SB 79 having been signed by the governor and huge impacts to San Diego County, and that Mario will be having, you know, and staff will be looking at this and coming back after there's been, you know, the definitions and all of that that's going to be coming down from the state. Mario, do you have anything more to add to that?
No, we're gonna wait for the guidance. We're not sure which agency is gonna put it out, so then we can go and develop the maps based on the guidance. We are not sure if it's gonna be the housing department or the prior Office of Research and Development or
Planning and Research.
yeah.
OPR.
OPR, who's now called Lucy. But we're gonna wait for the guidance and then our planning department and GIS teams will start working on that.
Right, and it will impact some of our policies because there will be triggers. And we need to know, each of our cities need to know, especially San Diego, Vista, and the city of Oceanside, what those triggers are to ensure that, to minimize the impacts. There is a huge disincentive with respect to transit on this.
Yes, as opposed to what some folks are saying. Yes, most cities I've heard from are saying, I don't want the increase in frequency because that might tip me into an SB 79 situation, which is not wonderful. Also, I just found out that NCTD's frequency is being reduced starting the end of this month to once per hour. So not really a commuter rail, is it? Unfortunately. All righty. I'd also like to remind everybody that even though it's Halloween, we are going to have a meeting on the 5th Friday, October 31st at 9 a.m. Feel free to wear a costume, but feel free not to wear a costume. All right.
Is the color going to be orange? No. sorry.
That's it. Very good. I will now turn it over to Mario for his update.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of items, as you all know, there's a federal government shutdown underway. We're monitoring the potential impacts to SANDAG. The biggest potential impact will be funding processing. The Department of Transportation is not directly impacted with furloughs because it works out of the Highway Transportation Fund, but the processing of the grants and all that may be delayed. So we are monitoring and we're working with the different agencies. Also, the Department of Transportation issued an interim final rule with significant changes to our Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. These changes affect how firms become certified, how existing firms maintain certification, and how recipients enforce DBE participation in contracts. SANDAG is currently reviewing the final rule and working with our funding agencies to ensure that we're in full compliance. So there's a lot of moving parts of it and we're waiting for more guidance on it. It affects ongoing contracts that have been awarded, contracts that have been selected and are getting ready to get executed, and contracts that are in the process to be put out into bid. So we are tracking all that. Also want to make aware of the board that last week we had a meeting in Sacramento between SANDAG and the other three major MPOs together with stakeholders, as well as with former Senator Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg. And this is to discuss innovations and changes or updates to Senate Bill 375, which is an effort to aims to update the state's GHG target setting process and strengthening the implementation for climate beneficial projects. This legislation has been in the books for 18 years now, and what we've been bringing up that there is a moment to pause and look at what can it make it better, or what has worked and what hasn't worked on the legislation. I think housing will also come into the conversation as well as the BMT discussion. So stay tuned, but it was a great conversation with different stakeholders, and we're excited about this. And we'll bring you more updates. Also, our director of the planning department was at the Regional Council of regional governments in the East Coast. Antoinette went there, very robust conversations, and eventually we'll talk more about other innovative financing opportunities. A lot of discussion occurred on innovative financing also through nonprofits and also philanthropy and partnering with governments to expand the pots for grants that happened here with the San Diego Foundation and our housing grants that we were just awarded. So it's always looking at different models that can make us better. Project updates and going back to grants. And that's why we also need to look at new models. Our smart growth incentive programs that we were expecting to come out in the next coming weeks, we're going to put a pause. We need to reevaluate our tables. We found a little mistake in some of our tables. That doesn't mean that our ranking was wrong, but we need to do some quality control, quality assurance. The responsibility falls on me in making sure that that's a solid program and it's very transparent, and I'm committed to that and to recalibrate any elements in this agency to make sure about that. So please stay tuned and we'll bring more updates on this. Also, yesterday we had a joint working group meeting on the regional plan, and we met with the Social Equity, Mobility, and Sustainable Communities group. Very robust conversation, similar to the ones we had here on the regional plan. And we already started talking about the 2029 regional plans and ideas of what we can incorporate. And those innovative financing discussions, I think, are going to be very robust for the upcoming regional plan in 2029. Our director for government relations is going to be heading the staff team going to the trip with the regional chamber to Mexico City during the next week, and she'll be supporting those board members that will be attending that trip. I will be with the other team members attending the Bridge, Tollways, and Turnpike Association Conference in Denver this weekend, and this is to try to learn of new technologies for managed lanes, tolling, and other infrastructures. And finally, a silver lining here, the WTS awards ceremonies were this week. SANDAG got 2 awards, and we claim one as a SANDAG one, but actually our Deputy Director for Planning, Tueri Fayola, was awarded Woman of the Year award. So super excited about that somebody from our team is recognized. Again, kudos and recognition to Tueri. And we also got an award for Innovation Transportation Solutions in our partnership with the City of El Cajon and the City and the San Diego River Conservancy for the El Cajon Boulevard Street streetscape project. So that was also very excited about that. And that concludes my updates. Thank you.
Wonderful, very good. Okay, seeing nobody else on the board, we'll now move on to the consent agenda. Michael, public comments, please.
Yes, Chair, we have 2 in person. If you are virtual, please raise your hand now. First up is Truth, followed by allegedly Audra.
Seems like they're giving out awards like candy corn. Item 3.1, let the record show that Carolina was late again. Item 3.2, who owns the Public Recreational Beach Impact Mitigation Fund account? Who decides how it's spent? Yes to the $1 million, still stares at Swami's Beach, but make sure to keep the trademark yellow caps. Item 3.3, instead of having Joe hang out at Old Town Station for an hour, I'd rather have every representative actually ride the transit so they can see how the safety of the riders is being neglected, because this is hopefully no longer going to be tolerated by the federal government. Item 3.4, a $67 million contract means the Building Construction Trades Council must have a monopoly on the contract. Who's on the evaluation committee that's recommending who gets contracts? The item says contracts are for north and south portions of San Diego County. The 3 companies chosen, Sunshine Towing is in North County. Both Angie's Towing and Road One Towing are in the city of San Diego. What happened to East County? Is this another SANDAG neglect of the most underserved area of this county? Why doesn't this item list how much each towing company is getting paid? How can this board approve contracts without amounts publicly listed? I'd like to see a public transit service patrol for a van to pick up stranded transit users when trolleys or buses break down. I'd also like to see a bike lane service patrol to render aid to bicyclists who get hit because they decided to ride in the street with cars. Item 3.5, I still want some reasoning as to why Allison for the audit screening committee. Does she have audit experience? Why not Minto? Why not Katie? Is it because Allison was the only one available for another meeting? And since the application window is going to be extended to the end of this month, I'd like to see every board member go back to their city council and tell the public that SANDAG is looking for people to join the audit committee and list the requirements. I've only seen Luz Molina publicly announce this, so she has earned a gold star that the rest of you do not have yet. Now, how can we force Agnes to stay on board as a lifetime audit member right there with David Zito next to her? They've done a great job, is what I'm saying. Thank you.
Next is allegedly Audra, followed by Paula Bold online.
It's crazy that you guys are reducing frequency and then you want people to get around using transit. I don't know how you're going to do that if you're impeding their ability to do it. And real quick, housing project that just got passed by this County of San Diego actually put people in a fire danger in Rancho Santa Fe because there's only one exit and they're potentially adding 500, roughly almost 500 homes and potentially a couple of thousand people with one way out. That kind of stuff needs to stop because it's endangering people. And the fire chief even said that if that was brought forward today, it would not be passed. Then he told the County of San Diego that it was safe. It's ridiculous. Now this, contract for freeway service patrol. I just don't understand where the $67 million is going to go. That's $13.4 million per year, $36,712 a day. And if you split that between the 3 companies, that's $12,237.44. Are people actually, once they get picked up by this service, having to also pay for the tow service, or is this completely free to the people? I just don't understand how much, like how many people are even being helped per day, why $67 million is being allocated to this. Like, is there a need? Because I don't see, it's not like people are stranded, like a lot of them on the freeway. I mean, it's a good service to be doing, but if we have to pay on the back end after we're picked up, then where is this money going? And I think you guys need to do a breakdown and show more data when you're engaging in contracts like this so that we can trust where our money is going. And then show whether or not people have to actually pay for that. Like, do you have to pay for the gas if they bring it? If they tow you somewhere, how much is that going to cost? And what is this going for then? What's the $67,000? I mean, is it to make more money off of that kind of a service? Because that tends to be what happens. And I think you guys need to be more transparent with the people of where our money goes and why it's costing that much money.
Next is Paula Bold online, followed by Blair Beekman.
Paula Bold, it's interesting that you appointed Rolando Charvel, Finance Director for the City of San Diego, a city with an over $200 million deficit, which is so poor that its solution includes raising money with an illegal and an extortionate garbage fee and a jacked up parking fee to Balboa Park. Bad choice, politics over common sense. Glad you want to do a supplemental process, but there should probably be an addition of qualification of running an agency without a huge deficit, since both the city and county of San Diego have substantial deficits. You should expand targeted outreach by specifying other areas with good finances too. And the contract award for the freeway patrol, it's a bit hard to give an opinion on the contract to approve these without seeing the actual contract or contacts. The title says one vendor, the text says 3. You should look at customer reviews and weed out the loser. Yelp reviews for Road 1 towing in San Diego are overwhelmingly negative, citing issues like car damage, rude customer service, overcharging, and predatory practices, with some accusing the company of intentionally stealing and damaging vehicles. Not a good choice. Reviews for quality towing and recovery show mixed experiences, with many praising fast and professional service, while others report less serious issues with communication, language barriers, and service inconsistencies. Some
Thank you. Your
users
time has expired. Next is Blair Beekman, followed by Consuelo.
Hi, Blair Beekman. I wanted to speak to the meeting minutes. Thank you in how you're asking if people can raise their hand for Zoom at this time when you ask for public comment, because it takes me a bit to get to do that sometimes, to get to the hand raising feature. Sorry about that. Thank you. The ask helps stretch out time a bit. Thank you. I wanted to comment about the meeting minutes, a regional plan that we talked about here last time. I couldn't quite make more clear last time that I really hope there's an emphasis on environmental concerns with the future of the low sand corridor issues. You're currently working on partial double tracking, updating it, improving it, and I think that can be acceptable. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have to double track the entire corridor and route. And I don't think we're quite clear on that concept yet. This is a test run to see if, by doing the partial double tracking, it may simply be enough. And we have to acknowledge that and understand the parameters and what working towards that means. And we're not making that clear enough. And I think we have to make those efforts. So good luck to make those efforts and to talk about trolley issues, possibly for the future of, say, from Del Mar to Oceanside. I think that can still be a possibility. I hope we can consider those sort of items. And there's an overall environmental concern for the future of the area. I think that's about all to cover for myself. Thank you.
And our last public comment is Consuelo.
Okay, so first off, Consuelo here. I wanted to say amen to everything that Audra and Paul mentioned. Also, I wanted to go ahead and reiterate about the tow companies, the Yelp reviews. And so it says Yelp reviews for Road 1 towing in San Diego are overwhelmingly negative, citing issues like car damage, rude customer service, overcharging, and predatory practices, with some accusing the company of intentionally stealing and damaging vehicles. Reviews for quality towing and recovery show mixed experiences, with many praising fast and professional service, while others report less serious issues with communication, language barriers, and service inconsistencies. Some users highlight instances of excellent assistance, for flat tires, jump starts, and even battery issues. The Sunshine Towing has 8 out of 9 positive reviews, with customers highlighting quick response times, friendly and professional service, and affordable rates. So the good news is that 2 out of 3 seem to be decent choices. Whatever. Okay, that's all I got.
That concludes our public comment on consent, Chair.
Thank you. Board member comments? I see Councilmember Fisher on the board.
Thank you, Chair. This is in regards to item 3.5 about the audit committee application process for public members. I'm just curious from staff if 18 days is long enough. And if we don't get a sufficient number of applicants, what does that look like? Will it keep coming back to board? The reason why I say this, we have 2 public members who have been on the committee for a while, who've extended, who've been fantastic. And I just want to make sure that we have a path forward if by chance we don't get a sufficient amount of applicants.
Hey, Councilmember Fisher, this is a clerk, and I'm leading the application process this time. We did discuss with the screening committee on the timing. They agree that 3 weeks would be good, but if we need more time, we could open that. But we think that'd be good.
Would it have to come back to the board for approval to reopen it again?
Likely, given that any changes to the supplemental process would need to be approved by the board.
Okay. I want the process to move forward. So, got it.
Makes sense for us to put in 3 weeks or until a sufficient number of applicants have been received?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, let's do that so we don't have to continue to come back. Thank you for bringing that forward. Okay, Mayor Sanchez.
Yes. Thank you. With that addition, move approval.
Very good. And I see Councilmember Pikus is on the board. Would you like to second the consent calendar before you mention your comments?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, second by Pikus and Poway. Your mic, please.
Okay, I'd like to reiterate Mr. Fisher's comments about the audit committee. Again, I'm thinking a lot of people don't know about it and that the applications were open in 3 weeks. Okay, maybe. Well, I looked at the requirements and said it wanted someone with audit background and pretty preferably a CPA. And most people with those qualifications probably may not have the time for this. And it may be a pro bono activity. And I think it's scaring off a lot of potential applicants. I know in our city, in our budget review committee, mostly we want lay people to give an outside perspective because we have plenty of accountants on the inside looking it over already, and maybe broaden the requirements to not want somebody. Do you really need forensic accountants for this board, or is it just looking it over? Thank you.
Any response to that? Is that part of the legislation?
Is it, I think we're gonna check if it's by statute.
It is in Board Policy 39 that outlines what the requirements are for those open seats for public members.
Okay, and Board Policy 39 will eventually be coming back to the audit committee and into the board. So that's something we could take a look at that. Yeah. Okay, with that said, I have a motion and a second, adding to item 3.5, that phrase that I mentioned, that we would extend it until a number of applicants are received in order to find members. And let's vote. Please use your devices.
The motion passed. Wait, I think Supervisor Anderson is County A there. Oh, is that an aye? We can update. Is that an aye on that for the consent? I didn't see your vote go through.
Oh, it shows.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, the motion passes unanimously with those members present.
You push the request to speak because I see you up here. So make sure to vote it's 1, 2, or 3. To speak is 0. Okay. It cleared? Okay, you'll fix it. Thank you. Okay, did you want to speak? Because now you're on the board to speak. I think
Yes, we know that for the record. Thank you.
Okay,
Supervisor.
okay, we're all clear. All right, we're good. Okay, now what we've all been waiting for, we're going to move on to the HNTB audit. I'm going to go to Courtney and Michelle. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I'm Courtney Ruby. I'm the Independent Performance Auditor, which is the Chief Audit Executive at SANDAG. And I am joined with the audit team today, Michelle Ludwig, who's sitting to my left, the Deputy Independent Performance Auditor, Doug DePete, the Principal Independent Auditor, and Michael Ryan couldn't be here today, but he's the Associate Independent Performance Auditor on the performance audit of SANDAG's contract and project management over HNTB. This is a part of the Audit Committee's approved fiscal year 24-25 OIPA annual audit plan. I do want to call out that this is the 5th audit in contracting since 2022. So compared to prior audits that focused on general controls, invoicing accuracy, or specific procurement types, this audit took a more comprehensive and integrated view of contract oversight, vendor performance management, and project delivery specific to HNTB. It evaluated not only procurement and compliance, but also the effectiveness of oversight, scope management, timeliness, and budget performance, making it broader in scope, yet depth and focused within a targeted area. This audit's recommendations are aimed at addressing ongoing gaps in agency processes, and while there may have been awareness of some of the issues by management, the majority of the risks have not yet been identified or resolved. The audit scope period is from July 2019 to June 30th, 2024. I need my glasses for this part. The audit's overall objective was to determine if SANDAG's oversight of the contractor HNTB was sufficient. OIPA sampled 5 active capital projects awarded to HNTB to determine whether contracts and task orders were awarded competitively, included clearly defined scopes of work, and were subject to proper contract and project management oversight, including appropriate approvals and whether the projects were delivered on time and within budget. OIPA also assessed the effectiveness of contract and project management processes over a non-competed contract award to HNTB to provide oversight of another vendor's work. We did encounter challenges in this audit, and I'm going to go over a few. First was data integrity. So in the records retention system in contracting is composed of the contracts library, shared drives, CMS, and ERP. Figure 6 in the report shows the system prior to March 2020 all the way through the current date. Data integrity is always evaluated as part of our audit process. We have to determine whether systems prevent unauthorized access, manipulation, or error. There were several control weaknesses that we noticed in contracts library: a lack of user access controls, absence of an audit trail, poor organization and documentation. Data integrity issues make it harder for us as auditors to determine which documents are final, complete, and relevant. We use CMS as the expected system of record, but we also went into the contract libraries when needed to find documents when they could be located. We had 2 material limitations in our audit scope on this. The first one is, of the 5 on-call master contract solicitations reviewed, 2 were either missing or incomplete. 2 were provided a couple weeks ago. That was 7 months after the initial request and after audit testing was complete. We also had task order solicitations for all 5 sampled projects selected in the audit were missing. These documents, solicitations, indicate the task order scope, deliverable, phases, and schedule. So these gaps limited our ability to confirm scope, deliverables, and schedule communicated to vendors, determine whether appropriate vendors were invited to bid, and verify the criteria used to evaluate and select the winning vendor. An overview of the report is we have the introduction and background. We took time to really make sure you had all the information you needed in the background from nuts and bolts to then be able to jump into the findings 1 through 4, and I'll go through those today. So to give you a quick recommendation summary, because it's always anticipated when I do these presentations that you want to know if there's agreement on the recommendations. So we had agreement on all 29 audit recommendations, which is great news. 2 of them, in fact, are already implemented. So when I say 29 audit recommendations, 26 of them were brand new and 3 of them were repeated from the recommendations in previous contracting audits. In addition to this report is we also added a matrix of risk and urgency. So you can look in your report and see how when OIPA believes the recommendation should be implemented based on risk. And that's to be used as a guide for the administration. I'm going to summarize just in quick 9 bullet points, the gist of the recommendations, but I'll also go through them. So our recommendations focused on establishing or bolstering internal controls to ensure adequate control and project management oversight. They included establishing a mechanism to track task orders and amendments to their originating contract, ensuring on-call and task order solicitation records are complete and stored properly, to document supervisory review of independent cost estimates, to document the rationale for awarding task orders, to justify and document contract changes, to clearly define contract deliverables, and to establish a process to monitor contract deliverables, evaluate the resources needed to create a formal records management system, and then once that system is created, to assign a director level ownership to an agency-wide records management system. Between fiscal year 2008 and fiscal year 2024, SANDAG awarded HNTB 9 on-call on-call contracts. From those 9 contracts, we then selected 5 on-call contracts as part of our audit scope to test. And they're listed here from 2016 to 2022. You may ask, why does it extend before the audit scope and the audit scope goes to 2024? Whenever we test based on our government auditing standards, we may have to follow a transaction backwards or forwards. So that's why some of the testing would be outside of what you see the scope. We selected 5 multi-phase projects then to test, and those 5 projects are listed here. The Bataguitas double track, Del Mar Bluffs, Eastbrook to Shell double track, Roadway Systems Consulting Services, and San Dieguito double track. In the background section, we took care to provide you from the beginning to end of the contracting process. This gives you an overview. This is figure 4 as well as figure 5 in the report. So first, the vision is set by you all, and then projects are put in place to execute that vision. When that occurs and the project is developed, then it can be solicited out, if it's a large capital project, to a pool of vendors. It's called an on-call solicitation. From that solicitation, vendors who are qualified will be put in an on-call vendor pool. Once they're awarded that, then specific task orders are prepared for specific project work, and they also compete to win those task orders. Once those are awarded, you have things such as change management if a contract amendment would need to take place, or if there is a dispute resolution. And once a contract is executed, the project management needs to occur from beginning to end to ensure that what was agreed to will be delivered. And at all times, there needs to be records management and an audit trail. We also judgmentally selected 1 standard service agreement, and this did come from OIPA's March 2024 investigation. And this was in the non-compete service agreement between SANDAG and HNTB, which tasked HNTB with overseeing ETAN, the vendor responsible for implementing the new back office system for toll ops. So now I'll go through the findings. Finding 1, SANDAG lacked critical internal controls necessary to ensure on-call contract and task order processes were transparent, competitive, and compliant with internal and external requirements. These combined problems not only expose SANDAG to legal and regulatory risk, but also increase the potential for inefficiencies, unjustified cost, and reduced vendor accountability. The findings in this area include the following. Why missing is highlighted in red because those are the two scope limitations that I already introduced in the presentation. So first, missing records obscured how SANDAG should issue task orders to vendors. For 2 of the 5 on-call master contract solicitations reviewed, we could not determine what criteria SANDAG intended to use to award task orders to on-call vendors because documentation was either missing or incomplete. Without the final contract solicitations for sample contracts, we could not identify if SANDAG used the correct criteria to award task orders to on-call vendors. On-call contracts issued without clearly documented spending limits or approvals. There was a lack of supervisory review that undermines the confidence in independent cost estimates. There was missing task order planning and solicitation records. For 1 of 5, or 20% of projects we reviewed, SANDAG did not invite all required on-call vendors to bid on the task orders. For 3 of 5, or 60% of projects reviewed, SANDAG did not justify why H&TB was awarded task orders. SANDAG did not document future phases of work in new task orders as required. There was poor review and coordination during task order preparation and an unnecessary use of sole source and missing documentation to show if task orders were competitively bid or sole sourced. A contract amendment was not approved by H&TB as required. Task order amendment was awarded based on engineer continuity rather than firm qualifications. Dollar value on task order amendments do not match supporting documentation. There are 7 recommendations in the first finding. First, to establish a review process to ensure that the independent cost estimates are current, complete, and approved by management before a task order execution, and then to have supervisory review over that. Recommendation 2, create a tracking mechanism to link task orders and amendments to their originating task order solicitation for phased projects. We have to know what was in those original solicitations that was put out to bid, and that has to be linked. If we don't know what was originally asked, then we can't determine if it was properly bid, awarded, etc. Recommendation 3, for ongoing and new H&TB contracts and projects, ensure task order solicitations, evidence of who received invites to bid on task orders, and justification of vendor selection are added to the appropriate task order records in CMS or clearly identify them as missing and not found. Recommendation 4, update contract templates to clearly indicate whether the work is standalone or it is a part of a multi-phase project. Recommendation 5, develop and document a control to verify project managers properly documented rationale for awarding task orders to on-call vendors, including if competitive bidding was not used, how was it awarded? And what was the rationale if it was sole source? Recommendation 6, establish policies and procedures for when a new task order or amendment to an existing task order should occur. Recommendation 7, update contract templates to ensure spending limits are accurately documented as required. In addition, make sure approvers' names and signatures are present. We had a repeat recommendation to ensure including the Office of General Counsel to create more internal controls around approval and signature of procurement transactions. Finding 2, SANDAG's project management of task orders awarded to H&TB lacked critical internal controls over cost estimating, budgeting, deliverables, and schedule monitoring. The issues identified here point to a broader lack of oversight and process discipline in how SANDAG developed, monitored, and closed out task orders. This exposed the agency to financial risk, project delays, inconsistent results, stakeholder dissatisfaction, and diminished public trust. In this finding, we identified issues in both the area of cost as well as timeliness. So for For cost, only 29% of the task orders included a cost estimate amount needed to assess project cost. So this means the independent cost estimate, which is the needed to determine if cost proposals are reasonable and a beginning point for negotiation. Only 9 out of 31 task orders we reviewed had all the necessary information to evaluate end-to-end project costs to determine if SANDAG appropriately scoped the work and estimated project cost. So for the amount that SANDAG initially awarded HNTB, that was 38.4 million for the 5 sample projects. The actual approved spending increased to 40.9 million. 26 of the increases were completed, 26 of these were completed at or below the initial amount, resulting in a cost savings of 5.1 million. And 8 of the project task orders exceeded their initial award amount by 7.6 million. We did look at those to see if they were reasonable, and for the most part, the increases were reasonable. The net cost overrun is 2.5 million. Now we look at timeliness. Only 4 of the 30 task orders included documentation needed to assess timely completion of projects. So 26 task orders were missing documentation, so we could not determine timeliness. 4 task orders were still active. This is always the point in the presentation. My tongue gets tired. And 4 task orders had enough documentation for us to determine timeliness. And when we looked at that and evaluated it, we found that all 4 task orders were delayed. 1 task order had no amendment extending HNTB schedule. CMS closeout date was 4 years after the original deadline. Of the 3 remaining task orders reviewed, we identified task orders with missing or incorrect project schedules contributing to project delays. When we asked SANDAG about this, they shared that in several of the task order amendments, they placed this in the file. According to SANDAG, in the cases where project deliverables were due after the task order had already lapsed, the agency was aware the task order amendments were set to expire before the work was completed. However, we also included our response to that. By including work due beyond the master contract and/or task order expiration date, the vendor was either A, authorized to perform work after the legal authority of the master contract or task order had lapsed, or B, issued a task order that was already invalid due to the expired period of performance. There's 9 recommendations in this section. The recommendation 1 is to develop a control to ensure project managers prepare and retain complete, detailed, independent cost estimates for all task orders in accordance with the procurement manual. Recommendation 2, standardize project management task order templates to require a clearly defined list of deliverables, responsible parties, and due dates. Recommendation 3, require project managers to document the date vendors complete the final deliverables for tasks and retain evidence in the contract file. Recommendation 4, establish a formal project management process for monitoring project schedules, including periodic updates and milestone tracking. Recommendation 5, require all amendments include a revised project schedule when extending the timeline or modifying deliverables. Recommendation 6, require written justification for all schedule extensions and do not allow undocumented schedule changes. Recommendation 7, train project managers on contract monitoring responsibilities, including cost estimation, deliverable tracking, and schedule management. Recommendation 8 is about quality control. It is to establish a quality control process to audit a sample of task orders quarterly to ensure proper documentation is maintained, policies and procedures were followed, and exceptions were properly documented. Recommendation 9, incorporate adherence to policies and procedures in project managers' annual performance evaluations and require supervisors to sample their work and document compliance during these evaluations. Finding 3, poor contract development and lax oversight of HNTB service agreement to oversee another vendor. So this is the where SANDAG contracted HNTB for support services related to the back office system, including oversight. We identified several issues with contract design, deliverables, and oversight of HNTB's contract for overseeing the vendor responsible for the development and implementation of SANDAG's back office system. We found 37 out of 56 contract tasks did not have a corresponding deliverable. 14 tasks required HNTB to provide oversight, yet SANDAG did not define what oversight was. 2 out of 9 contract deliverables were not linked to a specific task in the contract. 8 out of 9 contract deliverables had no due date or time requirement. Contract cost increases totaling over $2.4 million were approved without documented deliverables or clear justification. And this is on a contract that totaled out $3.5 million. 4 recommendations. 1 recommendation run is update SANDAG's project management contract templates to require all tasks have corresponding deliverables that are clearly defined, measurable, and time-bound, and ensure all deliverables are linked to specific contract tasks and include acceptance criteria. Recommendation 2, update procurement guidance to require that roles and responsibilities in multi-vendor projects are clearly defined. Recommendation 3, establish a checklist-based review process for all contract amendments to ensure changes in scope, deliverables, cost, or schedule are fully documented and justified. Recommendation 4, establish a centralized, secure, and auditable repository for storing vendor deliverables during the life of each project and require project managers to upload and maintain all submitted deliverables in this repository. Finding 4, the final finding. Poor records management impacts project and contract oversight. I talked about this in the beginning as being a challenge, and we've talked about this in prior contracting audits. SANDAG's ongoing documentation issues stem from longstanding internal control weaknesses, including decentralized record keeping, a lack of standardized processes, and insufficient staff training and management oversight. Although prior audits identified these problems and some corrective efforts are underway, critical gaps persist, contributing to inconsistent, incomplete, and unreliable contract records. We have 6 recommendations. First, review and update all ongoing and new HNTB contract and task order documents in CMS to ensure final versions are complete, correctly labeled, properly loaded. Recommendation 2, review and update CMS data fields for HNTB contracts and task orders. Recommendation 3, create and apply a consistent methodology for assigning competition types to contracts, task orders, and amendments. Recommendation 4, establish and enforce a standard naming convention in the files. Recommendation 5, evaluate the allocation of necessary resources. This is very important around records management, including budget, time, and tools to improve documentation efforts through the creation of a formal records management system, not just for contracting, but for the agency, and assign director level ownership to ensure accountability of the records management system. A repeat recommendation in this section is to develop a formal quality assurance process to ensure that final versions of the documents are timely, accurate, and properly stored, and to implement a training program to build employee understanding and skills related to documentation standards and requirements. And with that, that concludes my presentation. And the chair of the audit committee, I did bypass you in the beginning. Did you want to make?
Well, we're going to go right down to the management response, and then we'll go to the comments from our chair and other council
Great,
members
thank you.
after the public. Okay. All right. So we're going to call, I'm going to hand it to Mario first.
Okay. Well, thank you. And it's always great to hear from Courtney and her team. It gives us a lot of good perspectives and ideas of where we can be better. Audits are always a great opportunity to recalibrate. The findings, as it was mentioned, the findings are very similar to other ones. This one was very specific to a company, but we have had contracts and sole sourcing audits, and it basically touches into controls. and the team will talk more about that in more detail. I think my point that I want to make is we can keep chasing recommendations, but we need to zoom out and look at the root causes of what it is. And the team will kind of identify those root causes. And those root causes are systematic in not just contracts. It's not just project deliveries. We're going to find them in the HR department. We're going to find them in the finance team, in the contracts. And what I'm trying to say, and it's not those teams. We have an incredible team of employees who are great professionals. But there is, like I said before, with time, we had in the past a very strong management team in the mid 2010s and before that acted as the guardrails. Then the attrition happened, and those strong people who were managing the agency went away, and the lack of manuals and procedures and the lack of very seasoned personnel, there were no guardrails to follow, and employees were trying to just keep things moving by themselves. Shanae and Clint will talk a little bit about what we're doing. I think the main pillars that Shanae, which is our internal controls director, and this is the first time she'll be talking to you, the board. We did poach her from the audit committee. I have to admit that, but you'll see why she's doing what she's doing. She's excellent. But we identify, some key pillars: documentation central repository, update to policies and procedures, staffing training, and some project management. If you bundle all this, it equates to recalibrating the agency. That is zooming out, recalibrating the agency. And recalibrating the agency will not be achieved just by doing 200 recommendations or something. It's doing those recommendations, but also being the architect, all of us, of how those recommendations feed into a more restructuring of the agency. So we do have a plan. The plan is not going to happen tomorrow, and it's not going to happen in 6 months. It's going to take a while to get there, but we're more than welcome to come and give continuous reports on how we're going about it. But Shanae, Clint, take it over to just talk more in detail.
Thank you. So good morning. I am Shanae Pickney-Forrest, the Director of Internal Controls, and with me is Clint Peace, the Senior Director of Capital Delivery. I have reached my 3rd month here at SANDAG, so since this is my first presentation to the committee, I'd like to do 3 things. First, I'd like to take a moment to explain my role. I want to give an overview of an organizational assessment that I have done internally to date, and kind of explain the resulting areas of focus that I have prioritized based on my internal review. And then I also want to overview our management response of the HNTB audit and the connection to the work identified in my organizational assessment. So first, my role. My role as the Director of Internal Controls, I am responsible for making sure SANDAG is compliant with regulations, with its own policies and procedures, and with other relevant guidance. I'm also here to make sure that we are efficient with the use of resources, both financial and staff related. So we're entrusted with public funds, and we should be proper stewards of those monies. We're also employing some of the best and brightest employees, and we want to make sure that their time and their expertise and their efforts are maximized. Lastly, I am here to be deliberate about strategically planning and thinking about our organizational risk and developing strategic plans and approaches to address them. My approach to these duties will be threefold. One, coordinating internal controls and process improvements within the organization. Two, being transparent and communicating our efforts with various stakeholders, including the board and the public. And then three, synchronizing audit efforts. What that means is that I am looking to align audit efforts across various audits that SANDAG participates in and provide a coordinated response. I think it may be known to this body, but I'll state it anyway, that SANDAG is an agency that undergoes multiple audits by multiple audit entities. And so while we are responsive to OIPA's audits, we also have to have that same level of attention and detail and responsiveness to the other audits as well. So to illustrate this point, I'd like to provide an overview of some of the audits that occur with SANDAG on a periodic basis. And so some disclaimers about this graph. This list is based on my internal review and the audits where staff engagement was very high when I came on board. It's not inclusive of our financial audits or other audits that may be underway. And it's as of the end of September. So in addition to OIPA, we do have Transnet audits. These are triennial audits conducted by the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee to assess SANDAG's performance in Transnet-related funded-related projects. We had 92 recommendations there from 2018 through 2024. At least 60% of these are completed, and that number may be higher as we have some items under consideration for implementation. We also have Transportation Development Act audits. These are triennial fiscal and performance audits conducted to assess compliance and efficiency in the use of state transportation funds. We have 9 audit recommendations here. These are new as of June 2025. And then, of course, we have the OIPA's recommendations. So as you can see, there are well over 250 recommendations for us to address. So while I was doing my assessment, the next question that came to mind for me was, what do these recommendations all have in common? Because I am trying to get to the root issue, the root cause of why we're getting so many recommendations across the board. So and when I did my assessment, I took all of the recommendations and assigned themes to these recommendations, themes such as training, standard operating procedures, budget, et cetera. And what I want to highlight for the board is that standard operating procedures trended fairly high. You can see there at 30%. Central repository and documentation, that was a trend at approximately 10%. And training was trending at roughly 9%. These are the areas of focus that I have prioritized based on my assessment of audits, discussions with management and staff, and my professional judgment. From an internal controls perspective, these are framework themes that are foundational to us addressing root causes, meaning we must address these issues first, because many of the recommendations across audits and inclusive of this HNTB audit stem from these areas needing development and enhancement. So for example, if we look across multiple audits, standard operating procedures are a common theme. In this graphic here for this slide, the numbers correspond to recommendation numbers in each audit report. So for OIPA's procurement audits 1 and 2, and the sole source audit, we see that there are standard operating procedures. This list isn't exhaustive, but just illustrative of how standard operating procedures appear across multiple audits. Now you'll see that the HNTB audit also has standard operating procedures related to the recommendations. So instead of taking these recommendations audit by audit individually, we are looking to address all of these themes holistically across the board within the organization. And to that end, when you read the last few OIPA reports, we keep seeing similar findings and recommendations. And I want to, at this point, show how we will be addressing the HNTB audit findings under the framework of the themes I have discussed. In regards to our management response, we agreed with the recommendations in the report. And the findings at their core are telling us that we need to make improvements in those three thematic areas, the documentation, the standard operating procedures, and training. And before overviewing our management response, I do want to provide two pieces of context for the findings in the report. I want to start with the scope. For the scope of the audit, the period covered by the HNTB audit was also covered in previous audits. So for the HNTB audit, the scope was from July 2019 through June 2024. The previous procurements Part 1 and 2 audits was from July 2017 through June 2021. And so for the previous sole source audit, the scope period was from July 2022 through July 2024. So when we read the report and we see language such as ongoing documentation issues, persistent issues, I just want to ground us in the fact that those items that have been identified are not new. They've been previously identified, and we are we're actively working to address those corrective actions. The second point of context that I would like to provide is in relation to the document repositories reviewed. So for this audit, OIPA elected to review documents that were housed in the contracts management system primarily and solely. As the auditors, it's their discretion to establish the scope of the report, and that includes the document repositories that they will review. However, I want to provide context to the board and the public when you see findings that state that documents were missing. Missing does not mean non-existent. Missing means that documents were not housed in CMS, where OIPA elected to exclusively review, but the documents may have been housed elsewhere. So they may have been physical copies of the documentation, and/or there may have been copies of those documents on the SharePoint site. Especially as we think about the time period of some of the contracts that were reviewed. They may have preceded 2015, where the CMS system did not exist at that point in time. To that end, I also want to address language in OIPA's report stating that for 2 of 5 on-call solicitations, SANDAG did not provide OIPA with the solicitation documents for 7 months until the conclusion of the audit. That statement is a little misleading and it omits context, and I want to provide clarification to the board. The information was presented 7 months later because I arrived at SANDAG at the end of the audit when the report was being finalized and OIPA was closing the audit. In reviewing the report, I had questions. At the time, OIPA indicated that the documents were missing, but staff was indicating to me that the documentation existed, and they had tried to provide OIPA with access to the documentation outside of CMS earlier in the audit. I requested the documentation from the staff, and after seeing the documentation, it became clear to me that the documents were not missing, they were housed elsewhere. So at that time, I resubmitted the documentation to OIPA because the documentation did exist and we wanted that reflected. So as a former auditor, I think context in reports is critical to avoid misunderstandings that can lead readers to wrong conclusions or implications. Through my position as I liaison between staff and auditors, these types of issues will hopefully be addressed in the future during the course of the audits. With that context, SANDAG, we do acknowledge that improvements are necessary, and we respect the perspective and information that OIPA is providing to us. And SANDAG is committed to actively implementing the recommendations and improving overall outcomes. With that, our management response. So as it relates to standard operating procedures, overall, the recommendations entail developing standard operating procedures that refine practices relating to things such as ensuring the independent cost estimates are current and reviewed, that spending limits are accurately documented, and that larger project management standard operating procedures related to roles and responsibilities, tracking schedules, cost and scope are updated. So of note, current procedures require ICE forms to be uploaded in CMS for review and routing. Some of the recommendations will require us to review existing practices and determine the best ways to incorporate recommendations. For those project management related standard operating procedures, management is developing a comprehensive project management guide, which is under the direction of Clint Peace, and that will entail standard operating procedures and other items that have been identified in the recommendations. We also want to note that for items that were related to standard operating procedures, 2 of the recommendations have already been implemented. As it relates to central repository and documentation, in summary, the recs are related to making sure that information in CMS is standardized, that there's proper categorization of the types of documents that are in there, that documents are easily trackable between, and that documents are properly reviewed. There's also some project management related items. For our response, we're currently in the process of refining the procurement's document repository. For the H&TB specific contract items, what we will do is identify projects that are ongoing or new. We'll review the information that exists, and then we'll add any outstanding documentation or items that belong in the file that are currently not there. As it relates to training, the recommendation is for project managers to, for SANDAG to train project managers on contract monitoring responsibilities. As I've noted earlier, there's a larger project management effort that SANDAG is undergoing, which will include standard operating procedures, training, and other guidance. For records management, the recommendation is asking SANDAG to consider a larger agency-wide effort to have a records management to have a records management system and identify the resources necessary to do so, which we have committed to assessing. For quality control process, this is asking SANDAG to audit a sample of task orders quarterly to ensure proper documentation is maintained and standard operating procedures are followed. That will be under my purview to make sure that on a periodic basis, we are spot checking to make sure that staff are following the established policies and procedures. Lastly, management agrees with the recommendation regarding the performance metrics. We are developing that comprehensive project management guidance, which will incorporate regular project status update meetings with the senior director and at the CEO level to monitor project progress. As for next steps, it's to establish a cyclical review process for the recommendations where we work to address recommendations coming due while identifying upcoming recommendations. Regarding the timelines in our management response, if we are able to address items sooner, we will. But we also want to make sure that we are taking the time that we need to fully respond comprehensively and appropriately to the recommendations that have been provided. We also want to be mindful of the fact that the staff responsible for implementing the recommendations is the same staff that is responsible for handling our ongoing day-to-day operations. And then lastly, we also want to be mindful that we will hit holiday season within November, December, which I think we all are anticipating. And so we have to account for the time where there will be extended leaves within organizations and by staff. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanae. We're going to go to public comment and then to member discussion, but I just have, yeah, after that. But I just can't hold it in. I just have to say, this is all just music to my ears, hearing your response. In the culture before before, Mario, was very rush. Let's just patch this, patch that, patch this. It's like remodeling a house room by room by room without taking a look at the entire place and getting a good blueprint, a good architect, taking it down to the studs and creating kind of a master plan. So I'm really pleased to hear that this is the approach, that we're kind of looking at some of the big themes, and then all the recommendations will get taken care of as we implement those themes. So I'm really happy about it. But let's go to public comments, please.
Yes. We have two in person. That's Truth and allegedly Audra. If you're online, please raise your hand now.
Lisa, it's kind of like how San Diego patches their roads. All right, this is from the 2024 retreat. I never forgot it.
Public trust has been depleted over the years with SANDAG, and we're referred to as idiots.
The root cause is you had a people problem. My favorite example, one amendment had a termination date of September 31st, 2022. However, there are only 30 days in September. You need Shanae check and balance. She's the director of check and balance, is what I'm trying to say. Why were HNTB's questionable toll lanes on the 15 not studied? It looks like HNTB got all the major contracts with SANDAG, a true monopoly, to fund their sales tax stream. And their strong point was certainly not tolling advisory or regional back office system consulting. 60+% of those contracts had no sole source justification, sometimes with no project manager, with less than a third of the task orders having an estimated cost, with pretty much no documentation, and with no due dates or timelines, and the loopholed contracts because it was an easy way to keep the contracts going. Questions: who approved the 8 overpaid contracts totaling over $40 million? Where was ITALK during all those years? Why did nobody on this board advocate for a contract records keeping system? Why were some people here in this room right now silent about the obvious corruption? Recommendations: immediately apologize and demand Nora Vanishing Vargas and Sean Terrorist Alo apologize for the denial of an independent investigation of HNTB that Bill called for in 2024. In 2021, Rebecca specifically called for an investigation into SANDAG's contracts. Follow the law, fire all employees that allowed corruption, sue corrupt grifters like Soviet dictator Hassan, Andre, and union cronies to recover losses, because engineered continuity is a euphemism for giving contracts like candy to the political friends. It was in 2021, after this board was hijacked by the political union and the second largest PLA, the board suddenly became corrupt overspenders who shun transparency and accountability. Is that why SANDAG moved into the exact same building as HNTB? In 2020, Hassan was even allowed to fund the campaigns of Georgette Gomez, Tara Lawson-Remer, and Paloma.
Thank you.
On the board.
Time has expired. Next is allegedly Audra, followed by Paul the Bold online.
Wow, the fraud, waste, and abuse is off the charts. I don't even know why we contracted with HNTB, especially when they're overseeing ETAN, and like, why didn't, even if they don't have any authority over them, why didn't they report what was going on? It doesn't really make any sense. And I feel like, I mean, just doing like what's the risk benefit ratio as far as keeping this company and continuing to, I mean, these are contracts and projects that, you know, you guys, we pay for. And when this kind of negligence is going on, it's like, and nobody's been really held accountable. It's like, you know, people are allowed to retire like Andre and, you know, get like severance pay. I mean, it's beyond me that this kind of stuff can still continue, but just going online and doing a quick search and seeing how many companies are in San Diego that are equivalent, there's 9 of them, and some of them are more specialized than HNTB. So the fact that we're engaged with this company and there's so much that has to be fixed, I just, because that trickles down into every other thing that you guys are engaging in. If this stuff isn't being, you know, handled in a manner that is going to make sure that there's, I mean, how many more audits are going to be done on this company? How much time are we going to like give them to course correct? And maybe they need to be looking at employees there and going like, who had their hands in all of this negligence? And are they still there? And can you trust that they're going to do their job? I just feel like there's no accountability. We talk and there's like all this information in here, but you're still going and working with the same company and having her say that, oh, they're not missing, they're just in a different place. Well, why didn't you know that? Why did it take 7 months to do that? And then saying like, because the holidays are coming up, we got to take some more time. I mean, it's just excuses are like, we
Thank
all
you.
got 'em.
Your time has expired. Next is Paul the Bold, followed by Andrea Ebbing.
Paul Bold, HNTB ignored or mishandled problems beginning in 2017, which were finally reported to the board years later. It's guilty as sin, should have been fired long ago. It is extremely troubling at this point in the audit series that there is still mention of major SANDAG deficiencies, that SANDAG lacked internal controls necessary to ensure its on-call contracting processes were transparent, competitive, and compliant with requirements, and that SANDAG's long-standing weaknesses in record management, lack of standardized processes, decentralized record keeping, and insufficient staff training and oversight. The auditor is spot on when she says these combined problems not only expose SANDAG to legal and regulatory risk, but also increase the potential for inefficiencies, unjustified costs, and reduce vendor accountability. Left unaddressed, these issues can undermine the integrity of SANDAG's procurement practices and erode public trust. That's pretty much what the public, speaker after speaker, has been saying for years. It is shocking that the recommendations include basics like establishing a mechanism to track orders and amendments to their ongoing contract, ensuring on-call and task order solicitation records are complete and stored properly, documenting the rationale for awarding task orders, clearly defining contract deliverables, and establishing a process to monitor them. SANDAG has
Thank you.
needs
Your time has expired. Next is Andrea Ebbing, followed by Consuelo.
Hi, good morning. My name is Andrea Ebbing, and I'm very passionate about auditing. And reason being, I like to kind of see what is actually taking place versus what we are told is taking place. And I wanted to just take a note of one of the comments made by a gentleman earlier about the qualifications for audit committee. And I think that those barriers might be intentional to prevent people from being able to join and therefore delaying the process of proper auditing. It sounds like all of these issues are compounding and they exist basically consistently. And there's something about I want to give you an example of quality control and due diligence in contracting, because as a county, SANDAG exists within the county. We're all members of the county, okay? And the county of San Diego failed to have any Brown Act enforcement, complete violations when contracting with Apex Recovery, for example. $5 million almost was awarded to them after multiple years of reports of opioid distribution involvement, fraud, embezzlement, insurance fraud, body brokering, child abduction, attempted murder by the owner, who is my ex. And nobody did a thing about it. In fact, they lied to the media and said that my ex had never been investigated or charged, or the DA had never reviewed a case against him, and continued to award million after million after million to him. And when Jack Pellegrino was fired, Sheena Figueroa continued to give him millions. Okay, so that's a really big problem. Also, Nathan Fletcher is not an employee of San Diego, and he's not a candidate, but he is still reporting massive campaign contributions and expenses. So if we can't identify those things as a city or county, but I can, I'm not qualified to join the committee, but I know if we just look it up, it's there. Thank you.
Next is Consuelo, followed by Blair Beekman.
Amen. Thank you for that, Andrea. Okay, so Gonzalo here. This audit confirms exactly what many of us have been saying for years, as Paul mentioned. SANDAG has been incompetent, careless, and completely unaccountable with public funds. These problems didn't just appear. They've been ignored and mishandled for years. And now, years later, they're being quote unquote formally acknowledged. The audit spells it out clearly. You lack internal controls, transparency, and compliance in your contracting process. Records are decentralized, processes aren't standardized, and staff training and oversight are insufficient. In simple fucking terms, this agency has no idea how to responsibly manage our money. The auditor even said it. These failures expose SANDAG to legal risk, waste, and corruption, and they erode public trust. Duh. And yet the so-called recommendations are so basic, it's embarrassing. Things like tracking contracts properly, defining deliverables, monitoring progress. These are fundamentals. At this point, this isn't about mistakes. It's about the culture of negligence and entitlement. The public has been warning you, speaking up, and you've dismissed us as if we don't know what we're talking about. I only wish more of the county were paying attention, because if they were, they'd see exactly what's happening here. Our money, our trust, and our future are being mismanaged by people who act like they're untouchable, who are not untouchable. Accountability is coming. Done.
Our last public comment is Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Hopefully accountability is here, and that's what you're trying to address with these type of issues right now. Good luck in this continued efforts that we can better and better address accountability. It's an ongoing issue that's just our best selves. Good luck how we do it, and we are doing it here. Thank you. I wanted to mention the work I do with tech accountability. I've mentioned earlier today, there are possibly some technology issues involved in the future of these toll things for 125, and to want to be working towards the best practices of tech accountability for the toll issues for 125 and for the border issues that seems kind of impenetrable and totally run by a federal government military complex. Those issues actually can become more open and accountable to address and talk about and work with, and to become a process more accessible to community. And making those small efforts is how we build that better future, and that we just have better day-to-day practices and work practices to address issues. And so I just wanted to remind that in all this work you're doing for this item, to practice the tech accountability for the toll issues, it adds importance and makes the process easier in talking about the issues today. Thank you.
That concludes our public comment on this item, Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to go first to the chair of our audit committee, Councilmember Fisher, and then I'm going to go to your colleague on the committee, Councilmember Molina.
Great. Thank you, Chair. I want to extend a heartfelt thanks to the audit office and all those who participated. Thank you for management response. I know that Shanae, this is a little bit different. She spent years on the audit committee, and now she's on the flip side working for management. And so having the ability to see both sides is important. I think that for me, the important part that I got through this whole process is being on the board when this kind of originally came to the board is a big issue. We're looking for an investigation of AT&T and any impropriety that may have happened. But I think that we have to remind ourselves that the auditors only do auditing and they don't do investigations. So kind of a big difference. There's no criminal outcome. Courtney and her team aren't going to walk around trying to figure out who gets put in handcuffs, but just an honest relation of what the audit found. I think one of the big steps is accountability, and accountability starts when you recognize that there is a problem, and you recognize that change needs to happen, and perhaps the problem hasn't always been with the people we do business with, but perhaps it's been how we do business within the agency and with our contractors. The big takeaway for me is that the agency still has a lot of room to grow, And I think that with the recommendations that were made, and I think that the process, obviously hiring a director of internal controls was a huge step. Somebody who has some ability to look at what's going on and what needs to be fixed. You know, Mario had mentioned the recalibrating the agency and the plan that will be implemented will take a long time. But, you know, we saw some timelines and some due dates on the board during the management response. Those aren't times where they're going to start digging in and fixing the problem. The problem's already starting to be fixed. And from my point and the other members of the audit committee, this is a huge step in the right direction. And it's been mentioned many a time that we are allowing ourselves to go forward as an agency because we do have new leadership. We do have new leadership at this board. Those of you who remember how contentious the era was at these meetings would understand why it wasn't possible to move forward and to be a better agency back then. So I firmly believe that staff is hardworking working hard to get these recommendations implemented, that we will see a big change, that it's not going to be a wait and see, that it's continue to happen. I think that all the staff are highly skilled. They're very aware of how the board feels, how these audits have come out. Sole source, we saw some of the same findings and this one. And if we were to do any audits in the future that talked about contracts and procurement, we'd probably get to the same point of having a repeat of some of the things we've heard today. So from the audit committee, I feel that we accept the recommendations and the findings and everything that was put into this, and all the while knowing full-heartedly that the team here is going to take care of them. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Molina.
Yes, thank you very much. And Member Fisher did take the words out of my mouth, but I like that we are on the same brainwave, it feels like. I do feel that we have the right minds onto this project. And just as Mr. Fisher pointed out, Mario did say this isn't going to be fixed by tomorrow or in 6 months. But I have a lot of comfort knowing that this project of starting to fix it has already started. And I dare say it started the second that Mario took his position here at SANDAG. So, and now that we have Shanae on board, and Ms. Courtney has been on board with us for some time now. So I do feel that we do have the right people in place that are going to get us through this. It is alarming. A lot of the information here isn't surprising, but it remains alarming. It does remain alarming. I do appreciate being able to be honest about it. And I want to continue that effort. You know, let's be honest about what's going on. I love hearing that there is a need to look back at the root causes and the root issues here. And this idea that Chair Huebner said about taking it down to the studs and, you know, being the architect that builds it back up. I like that idea a little bit better than the idea of just recalibration, because I think we are not just recalibrating, we are rebuilding something that needs to be taken all the way down to the studs. So all of these illustrations in my head are very helpful. I do apologize. I was not able to attend the meeting this week for the audit committee on Tuesday. We had a pretty big city council meeting in National City on that same day, and that was what my focus was. So I didn't get to ask my questions, and if it's okay, I would like to ask just a few questions about the missing documentation and the central document repository, some of the comments that were made, and I don't know if Shanae or Ms. Courtney are the appropriate folks to address this, but first I want to understand central document repository. Does that mean the CMS system?
I don't know if my presentation is still available, but we had it's figure.
Courtney, can you pull the mic forward, please?
Thank you, Chair. Figure 6 in the report talks about, and this is on page 13, there's numerous systems in place, and I do think this is a part of the problem. So you start out with you have shared drives, the contract library, which we talked about, and when I talked about the data integrity that we couldn't rely on, the contracts library due to numerous issues, and those have been called out before. And then CMS comes online and is utilized, but not all the information's pulled forward. And I think there's some, it's not clear. Like the system says it's going to be pulled forward, and yet records don't come in. So you want to have the information, you have to have contract files that are complete. That's the bottom line, right? And when we look at the number of audits we've issued and the amount that we've talked about, the records issue, you want to be able to go into the record and say everything that you need is there, and it's not. So that's one problem. When we talk about length of time, and that was, I know that management was concerned about the length of time, we had to go back to originating documents. So we're talking about solicitation and determining if the right vendors were invited to bid. We can't do that without going back to the solicitation documents. When we went to the solicitation documents for the on-call, we could only find 2 out of 5. When we asked management about them, they couldn't find them either. So when they were found a couple weeks ago, when we had the exit conference and Shanae is here, I think it's such a fabulous thing to have the Director of Internal Controls. And as Shanae already said, I think some of these issues going forward won't be issues. You know, I think that she was coming in, we were at the end, you know, it's not, nobody is disputing the fact that there is a documentation issue in the agency. So I think that will get clarified. We say as I did in my opening remarks, we use CMS mostly. However, we did go back and try to locate documents in the contracts library. Some we could find, some we couldn't. But again, what we say is a significant challenge is the integrity of the system, which is real. So I think the agency is moving in the right direction, you know, but in order to protect the agency with as many audits that are going on, the records management system has to be complete, you know, and we stated this in the sole source, right? If the files are missing, put a note in there that they're missing, because auditors trying to look for documents and staff trying to look for documents is wasting time. We do need to move forward. I think that the agency's going back to CMS. I think everybody's committed to have proper documentation and the staff training. So headed in the right direction, but that kind of gives you a perspective from the audit on documentation.
Thank you.
And if I may provide a little bit more context too, as Courtney was mentioning, with me being in the position to liaison between the auditor's office and SANDAG, issues regarding the availability of documentation will hopefully be resolved during the course of an audit. I think what it boiled down to was there was information in the CMS system, but there also needed to be an extended period of collaboration or coordination or discussion with the staff to find and locate, not to find, but to locate and or point OIPA to the position of those documents which were housed elsewhere. And so from SANDAG's perspective, we are not disagreeing with the fact that the document systems need to be efficient. We need to be able to trace documents across different platforms. But what we did want to make known was that missing did not mean non-existent.
Very good. Thank you. And I'm very happy that you did make that
Just a
distinction.
point of clarification. I
Shanae.
want to agree to disagree on this because we spent an exorbitant amount of time on going over and trying to find documentation. So I think that it's worth saying that we did work with staff and we did preliminary findings and we went over things. I do think that the Director of Internal Controls being here will help, you know, usher the process forward. But as the independent performance auditor, feel strongly about the documentation situation, and I will not sugarcoat it. You know, we are too many audits into this to not be real about where we are.
That's fair. Thank you. And I do appreciate the distinction that you are both sharing.
Thank you.
And the direction that you're both going forward in. And just if I could offer something, I realized how foundational it was for me to spend my time working in the early part of my career in biotech, where we were developing medicines that would go through clinical trials, and we were under FDA regulation, and we had incredibly strict document control procedures, and SOPs were a big deal, and the nomenclature in a consistency in the naming of documents. And it just, there was an entire SOP on just naming conventions, on just documentation. And that entire system at the company I worked with was called document control. So if there is, Ms. Shanae, something within your internal controls department that could focus on document control, that will look into all of this, a central document repository. I was going to ask something else on here, if there is a missing document that turned out not to be missing, how do you put it into CMS? I'm hearing now it's not that easy. It's far more complex than that. But if there is something that is truly document control and it can be tracked, as if the FDA was going to come in and track everything, right? I realize FDA wouldn't come here, but an auditor at any point. Setting that foundation, I think, and I realize this is what we're doing exactly with this Director of Internal Controls office. So again, I do feel that we have the right minds in place to get us where we need to be, and I do appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
And I'm just going to interject here too, because one of the things I'm going to ask Mario is if he could please put in an agenda item, maybe at the beginning of the calendar year, of the exact actions that are being taken to implement these pillars. I think that would be, we would learn about the systems that are in place and how we can, how far we're going to go back to put them back in, if we are, if we're not, how these systems speak to each other, what's being done already, what's being planned to be done. I think the board would really benefit from learning about this progress, this map that we're going to be following through. So with that, I'll go to Deputy Mayor Chavez.
Thank you. And first of all, what a detailed presentation. I want to thank our current CEO and of course our staff, our independent performance auditor, Courtney Ruby, just the entire performance auditors team. The work you did and the clarity you're bringing, we know what's in the past. That doesn't mean that because we talked about it, we're not going to retouch it anymore, because I think the community deserves it, right? I have to mention once more, as a public agency, we have the responsibility to go beyond the bare minimum. The bare minimum. We can't find files, we can't file contracts. We don't even know what we asked for these people that we were hiring. So I just have to mention that, this investigation stems from the mismanagement of the State Route 125 tolling system, where HNTV, and I have to remind everyone, was contracted to provide oversight, but was never given a clear role or authority. The audit identified increases to their contract totaling 2.4 million, over 2.4 million. As mentioned on page 36, right, item 4.1, attachment 1. These are millions paid by the South Bay and by Chula Vistans. I have to bring this to our attention again. We are the only tolled road in the county. We have been told that the SR 125 must continue while mismanaged by previous leadership, and a new system would cost millions to be added to our outstanding amount. I just have to fight again. We need to think of a way to retire it sooner. This clarity, and even though we've talked about this many times, I have to bring it up again because this is the root of the problem. This is why we all jumped in and asked what was happening, right? So I just plead with you. I plead that you look back and see how we can retire the 125 sooner. We can't keep losing money, reinvesting money, trying to fix it. It's time. We're wasting money, we're wasting time, and we're affecting the South Bay. So if you can't find it in your heart, to go back and look at it one more time, I would really appreciate it.
Thank you. Mayor Gasterlin.
Thank you very much. I too am going to be a little bit of a broken record in my questions, but I want to focus on slide 10 and slide 29 in the presentation from our independent auditor, the 4.1 presentation. I have questions about that. So slide 10. Well, yeah, we could stop at 29 on our way to 10. So slide 29 shows the 5 projects that you checked. And one question I have is, if we were to look at the numbers for the 4 projects that you did not check, would we see over or under spending? And I know you probably can't answer that, but I have to ask the question.
I understand, Mayor. We will only speak to what the scope of the audit covers. So no, I cannot answer that question.
So I would like to see the other 4, if other board members would like to see that as well. I think that would be helpful information to us. So now I'm going to drill down on the 2 that I know about. My counterpart here has drilled down on the tollways, which is the 4th one from the left. And I'm going to drill down on Del Mar Bluffs. So if we were to look at slide 10, and we don't need to, slide 10 tells us that in 2022, HNTB, in July 2022, HNTB was awarded a maximum amount of $50 million. And if we look at slide 10, and we can leave it here. If we look at slide 10, what we see is that the totals awarded to HNTB so far in the 5 that you looked at are $38.4 million awarded and $40.9 million spent. And that includes 5.4 awarded on Del Mar Bluffs 5, which I want to reemphasize. The Coastal Commission is requiring that all structures installed to reinforce the bluff be removed within 30 years or when the railroad is relocated, whichever comes first. And the second, so that was 5.4 million awarded, 7.3 million paid to HNTB. I'd love to know what the task orders were for HNTB. Maybe we can get a list of that. And then the second item is, it's the 5th one in the bar graph on slide 29, is the San Dieguito Lagoon double track. 11.5 million was awarded and 12.3 million. And that hasn't even gone to construction yet. So I'm wondering how that fits under the $50 million architecture and construction. You know, were the tasks even appropriate under the July 2022 $50 million? And that goes to my last question, well, second to last question. What do we do about these task orders that had no specific deliverables? How many of those were Del Mar Bluff 5, San Dieguito, and the toll roads, so the last 3 in there? And I'll ask my last question. Of all these dollars that have been given to HNTB in reimbursement for the work done on these task orders, how many of these dollars are federal dollars? And that goes to what Board Member Molina said. Any of us who have accepted even $1 federal dollar must track everything carefully. You know, my first lesson to students who join my lab is how to name files and where to put them. And they roll their eyes, and then 5 years later, when they're looking for a file and they find it, they are glad. So that's a lot. I've given you all the questions, and I look forward to your answer.
We can get you more details, and the team probably is working on it right now. And you know, I won't dive into it, but when you look at some things like the Bluffs projects, the Bluff projects are emergency projects overall, and on those ones, and I'm just talking in general, not the specifics itself. But when you deal with an emergency job that you just need to react, the scope is going to be moving because you are trying to stabilize something that's falling, and it's an emergency situation, and you're working on it. The team can get more. I don't know if you guys already have some more information on those ones, Clint and Dave, but that I do want to put it in perspective. And also on the one on the platform, that's a huge design project, right? That's going on, again, without having the details, but just looking at it. Normally, a design project, the design will be about 12 to 15% of the total project cost. So, you know, that the some of those amounts, I'm not making excuses or anything. I'm just giving you my immediate reaction to, depending the type of project, the scopes, but I don't know, Clint or Dave, if you guys have any more info for the mayor, and we will gladly come back to you and set a specific meeting, you know, giving you all the details you requested.
I appreciate that. I'll note that the amount of money awarded and then spent with HNTB is as large as 1 year of Del Mar's city budget.
Yes, and also to answer your about federal, most of our projects are federalized. In the case of the double tracking and the platform project, I'm pretty sure we're waiting for a federal grant. So once you put $1 of federal dollars, you have to meet all the compliances from the funding agency, let it be Federal Rail Administration, Federal Highways, whoever is the funding agency. And we go, all our contracts and our procedures are following the federal government's standards. Clint, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, like I mentioned, we can come back with more details, but just to answer the Del Mar Bluffs, kind of your point, Mario, the Del Mar Bluffs is primarily funded with state and federal dollars, roughly 1/3 federal, 2/3 state. So on all those, we have oversights, we have separate audits, we go through Caltrans for every submittal. So those projects are following all the audit recommendations and rules. Again, going back to what Shanae said, when we talk about missing contracts, well, how do you manage a contract with no scope? It was missing from the standpoint of OIPA's review. That doesn't mean that those documents didn't exist, right? Every one of those had clear scopes written and documented, they just weren't in where they maybe should have been in terms of document management system.
So it would be great to get copies of the missing documents.
Yeah.
And just for context on the Del Mar Bluffs
Dave,
5, exactly
The mic
like
closer
Mario's,
to you.
exactly like Mario said, it's an emergency and the bluffs are continuously falling. And so every time a bluff falls, NCTD has to go out there and see if the trains are safe to passage, right? And so we've got to stabilize those slopes for the trains to pass.
So I'm going to insert Courtney before you answer your part. What I just heard is that even as this bluff stabilization phase 5 project has been underway, which was in planning for quite a long time and was 2 phases merged into 1 and is now over $80 million in total, there have been emergency failures happening that have had to be accommodated during the construction. Is that what I just heard?
On the areas that we have not reinforced, yes, there's been emergency failures.
That's a separate topic, but Courtney, with respect, I wanted to make sure that point was made.
Thank you. And with the appendix, in relation to the information that we've provided, we have several appendix in the report. One of them in relation to Del Mar Bluffs is Appendix E, is scope changes to HNTB task order amendments. However, Mayor, we'll work with management, and if there's areas for us to clarify, we'll clarify it. I think there's more detailed project information that you want that they'll be providing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That satisfies my questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Picus?
Yes, I'm new here, so I'm not going to focus on the past or point fingers. I just want to look forward. I like a lot of the recommendations you made about processes and procedures, and mostly this was sparked by what Mario had mentioned at the beginning, is that 10, 15 years ago, you had a superlative management team that's very strong and kept a lid on things, but it kind of fell apart as people moved on. And I think that's what these recommendations are, is that if you put good processes in place and people follow the processes, there's less a dependence on whether you have a dream team in management that year. And so it separates a management era from an enduring institution. And that's part of the whole point of the ISO 9000 movement, where you document what you do and you say, here's what we do, here's how we do it, and then you do what you say. And if we have these procedures in place, there's going to be a whole new culture to the agency of how things get done. And then, you can track it and you can prove that, yes, we've worked in the public interest. And I think that's a good thing. And while I admit that in an emergency, expediency is necessary, it's okay in emergencies as long as the paperwork catches up later. And again, processes and procedures. And so that's why I kind of moving that we approve this, and it be beginning of an effort to revitalize the culture of the institution so that we can rebuild the public trust, which is a theme I hear from our public speakers a lot these days. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Shin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair and Mario, for explaining the past to me, because I didn't deal with any of this drama. So I'm new here. So one of the last slides that was put by Shawnee was the Q3 2026. It stated like some tangibles that may end up taking place right there. We're not expecting anything to be solved by then, correct? We're just going to be at a point where we hit a certain benchmark.
We are not expecting anything to be solved by then. But what this is for us are milestones to make sure that we're on track and we're kind of keeping abreast of what is necessary and having a constant reminder to look across all of the audits themselves, what's due and what's kind of relevant to these themes that we have already decided to prioritize.
Do we have a ballpark timeframe of when we're actually going to be able to finally exhale and say we got to a point?
Let me add to the response. We are not in a static world. We had our first kickoff project status meeting. We are developing all the updated procedures on tracking scope, schedule, and cost. We have, and I'm just going to give you spot examples. We just finished the interviews for bringing in a contract services manager that actually is not going to be the contracts award, but it's a manager. Once a contract is awarded, they're going to be tracking task orders and tracking how they're doing with burn rates, how they're doing with accomplishments, and also setting up task orders. We are developing a project management academy. We are going and doing a total overhaul on our procedures manuals for PM, and we're creating an office engineer where it's acting as the QA QC for the design for the task orders for design. So if a consultant or a consultant tells us you need to design this, or we need to do $1 million of work to get to this design, we're gonna go, no, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Let's scale it down. We only need so much, right? Let's do what really is required, and then let's not add. We are adding a whole bunch of processes and procedures. We are not inventing it ourselves. It already exists. There are agencies with very strong project management procedures. There's agencies with strong QA QC for design and construction management. And that's another area. We are really looking and recalibrating on construction management teams to be in the field, really checking the work that's being done, make engineering decisions about when we scale back, when we don't. So yes, the team is working on very specific deliverables, and that's what Shanae is talking about. But also the team, we are doing the work as we're going, and we're implementing as we're going things that may not be within the recommendations, but they're best practices to do businesses in this area. And it's going to be project management, and it's going to be finance, and it's going to be HR, and it's going to be the department that you look into it's gonna lack some procedures, processes, central repositories. We're even doing a data governance exercise because there's no single database that can cover all the activities this agency does. So we need to even have a data governance structure that will allow the systems to talk to each other. But that requires a systems requirements architecture and looking even way back on what are the systems requirements. So I do want to put that in perspective, and I really appreciate the chair asking us to come and highlight those efforts. We will come, as she has requested, early in the next calendar year, and you get to see what the teams are all working on. And that's what I was referring to from a timetable. It's a journey. It's going to be a journey.
And then so we're like, I've noticed through the slides and what you're saying is that the highlight of the issue are the fact that we have had a lack of leadership for our project managers to execute in consensus with with everybody so that we are able to like get a final package of how everything looks when it's all said and done. I'm not blaming the staff of the project management, but the fact that we haven't put in policies and procedures so that they understand like, okay, I need to actually put this file here and I need to do this.
Yes, and like the council member mentioned, right, that it's kind of like doing an ISO 9000 process where you're looking to or a Lean Six Sigma process. You're looking at every single step. You're looking what needs to be compiled. We can update a lot of standard operating procedures, but we need to compile them and create manuals for each subject that we lack. So it is an ongoing issue. We have some incredible employees, but you need to train them, you need to guide them, and we need to get back to the basics pretty much.
Thank you. And then I'm not sure, maybe it's back to you still. So it's stated that recommendation is for director level position to fulfill the responsibilities of the RMS. Are we considering adding a responsibility to an existing director, or are we talking about another position?
Yeah, and Courtney, feel free if I interpret this wrong. What Courtney is asking us is saying, hey, put an owner to each a lot of our recommendations at the management team level. When Courtney and me talks, she sometimes tells me often, you can't do everything, Mario. You need to delegate and assign things. So that's why we're building this team, and we are slowly creating the structure of the senior directors who are going to be overlooking all the different elements in the agency. And they, either the senior directors or some of their people reporting will be under them, will be the owners of a lot of the specific recommendations. And Shanae, as our internal control directors, is going to be the one pinching us saying, you ain't there. You need to do it better.
Okay, got it. And then we're also expecting to add staff into this realm in order to have a better and more efficient RMS. I should expect in the budget that we're going to be increasing staff?
No.
Okay.
And because also you have hired me to be a responsible manager. And if we're not seeing the realities right now, we're having less revenues. So what we're going to do is we're going to repurpose and move people around. Yes, we may hire specialists and here or there, but the agency should not be growing. All the opposite, because the reality of this agency is that our revenues are not growing. So what we do need to do is restructure, and we've been doing major restructuring. The program project management and delivery teams have, if you were to take a picture of them from 18 months ago to now, it's a totally different unit, and we're working towards that. So it's a matter of looking the talents in the agency, restructuring, redirecting. But no, we can't just say we're going to fix it and grow. We have to also be fiscal responsible.
Okay. And then a couple questions here. So we were told that there was missing documentation for this process. Have we found every piece of missing documentation that our auditor has requested?
So as part of the, so as part of the corrective action plan, what we are tasked to do is to go into the HNTB files that are opened and or new and or ongoing and check those files for current, updated, and or missing documentation. In the event that the documentation does not exist, we are to notate that in the file. But if those documents do exist and they're located in those other repositories, we're to bring those into the CMS system so that they're centralized.
Okay, that didn't totally answer my question, though. The question is those missing documentations that were asked by our auditor, do we have them? Do we go, oh, you know what, we didn't get it to Courtney in a timely manner, but here they are, I'm sorry we're late for this?
Feasibly, yes, because they would be housed in those other repositories. We would need to go into those files so that we can see exactly which file was missing. So in the audit, it may have said a solicitation document was missing, and another, it may have said the ICE document was missing. We need to go in, do a checklist, make sure all of those documents are current and present. And if they exist elsewhere, they've been brought into the system. If they do not exist, we have been tasked with putting a note specifically in the file that says this document is missing.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to stress on this because you said feasibly yes, but is that yes? So every
Yes.
documentation that she's requested for now we know exists.
Look, there may be some missing.
I get it, but
and I think Courtney was very clear. She had some voids. We're still looking into it. We're talking about contracts that started in 2016, right? So we are really making an effort in trying to pull everything, and you know that has to be something highlighted here that I think all of us are making a conscious effort to get what it's being looked at. But to be quite honest, most probably we haven't given OIPA all what they have asked, and we're still looking for it. And the point here is, you know, going back, checking, and like Shanae said, you know, if Courtney feels that we haven't delivered everything, either we recognize that we didn't find it or we update the database. But as of today, I have to look at you in the face and said, I don't think we have delivered everything.
yeah, that's, you know, for some of these things, especially going back to an audit and then to examine the audit, we need hard yeses and nos, right? So and I apologize, Shawnee, right now, because I'm kind of bearing on you with this, but if the auditor says there's things missing and then we're being told they're not missing, they were just scattered. And I ask, okay, did we find them? And we're not getting the answer as yes, we found them, they were just delayed. Then I am considering them as missing until further proven otherwise, right? So if the contracts or any of this had happened in the city of Carlsbad, I would say, where's the information? My constituents are asking for this. So that's kind of the question that I'm asking, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And at its core, I'm in agreement. What I'm saying is the documents that were sampled, we would need to go back and make sure to see which particular item was referenced as missing, because those documents are likely housed elsewhere. In the event that we go and we do a massive review of all of the HNTB documents, there may be some that were not a part of this scope that were missing that we would have to indicate in the file. But as far as the documents that were scoped, and as far as the documents where OIPA asked for documentation, their documentation was likely housed in those other repositories. It's going to be up to us to do the reconciliation to make sure, regardless, that those files are updated and current.
And do you think that if these were found, there would be any change in the conclusions of the recommendations or the findings?
I think as far as the audit, in and of itself, the concerns that OIPA is bringing up, those are legitimate. Those files should be updated, they should be current, they should be easily trackable. The distinction is in terms of the report writing, whether or not the documents are missing, that has a different that has a different lens as far as what I'm looking at, as opposed to documents being non-existent. If I go in and the documents, we have some of those documents, we presented those documents, they were there, those are not missing. If the documents were non-existent, that looks different to me.
I guess my
So-
point is just that, I mean, even just reading through this audit, it was like deja vu all over again, right? We're seeing common themes, as you said, through all of these audits.
Correct.
And getting, and only a sample of the contracts were looked at. You've gone through them, some are missing or some are somewhere else, whatever it is. We've come out with a number of conclusions, findings, recommendations.
Correct.
If we spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of our staff time looking in every nook and cranny, and we finally found all of those documents, would it make any difference in the results that we saw? In other words, I think personally that we need to be, clear and have sound audits, but I think we've got recommendations that we can move things forward with. And I don't know that if we were to find another 12 documents, if it would change how we proceed in the future to make sure that none of this ever happens again. Would you say that would be accurate? Yeah, Courtney.
So just to put it in context, any audit, you go in, we have a scope, we design our testing, and then we go over the findings. There's an opportunity to provide documentation. And then the audit is closed. So in this case, we had 2 missing documents that were presented afterwards. We have 5 task order solicitations that were never found. We do not know if they exist. Possibly they may be found. We don't, based on what we saw, they're not there. So we'll see. Doesn't mean that they're not going to be. But then if we go to a governance standpoint, right, of oversight, it can't be something that we're searching for. It's either here and the files are complete, or it's not. The recommendation is clear into saying the files need to be cleaned up.
And that's what we're going to be doing in the future, right? Okay, all right.
Correct.
Are you complete, Councilmember Shin?
Just-
Or do you have another one?
Yeah, I just want to express like why I feel concerned about this. If we are missing documentation and a liability takes place, we have no idea how much money we're going to end up having to expose ourselves to if we can't provide the information. But this reminds me, and now I have to apologize to my wife, because like when she asked me for something in the garage and you looked at my garage, you're going to look like it's a mess. And I go, I know it's there, and I have to go through the drawer and find it. And so that's one aspect. So I'm glad we're finding systems to clean this thing up. The one thing though, and it was just maybe the messaging, Shawnee, of how you're describing it is what perked my concern. Shanae, I'm sorry. Is that it almost seemed like you wanted to make sure you were taking care of your staff as opposed to understanding like what it was that is concerning us that we have to report back to our constituents.
If I may.
Yes.
That is not the case. I did not give my background, but I am a former auditor. So I'm very well aware of what Courtney and her team is expressing. What I am messaging is that for context in regards to some of the items in the audit, I think it was important to note that those documents weren't missing because that has a different connotation. Those specific documents, they were housed elsewhere. That is a documentation cleanup issue. That is a documentation central repository issue. We need to move documents from everywhere, place them somewhere. Missing is we never had the document in the first place. So that is a standard operating procedure. What were we missing? Why were we missing it? So from my perspective, I'm trying to pinpoint exactly what is it that the problem is. And in this case, it may be both. But based on the scope of the audit and the documents that were received, I thought it was important to make sure that this board and the public knew that missing did not necessarily mean non-existent.
For me, and just I'll end it on this, but for me, and I'm sorry to say it this way, but for me, not finding means missing. And that's how I have to report it back to the public. Say, if I can't find it, it is then missing. That's how I do my
And that may be, we may have to agree to disagree on that
Yeah.
one. That
Oh,
might be
yeah.
the distinction. They existed.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to get into every single specific today. I think we're a little past that. I actually had asked for this audit numerous times. I know we have a lot of new board members, and I'm glad it's finally done. And I'm disappointed in some of the things that we found. However, I do believe that we have new leadership and we can move forward in a very different way. And that's what I'm expecting will happen here. You know, my guiding principles in leadership, one of them, but probably the core, is accountability. Because when we fall short on things, we have to make adjustments so that we can do better. And I believe we will do better. It's just, and I understand that it will take time, but every day we need to do a little bit better. And I believe that will be happening. And, you know, when I had brought up, you know, what we were doing in San Marcos with our lien department, and then now we've got the internal controls, I think that's already a step in the right direction. I think that's already a big improvement. And Shawnee, is it Shawnee?
Shanae.
Shanae. Okay, sorry. I don't mean to call you the wrong name. I think what you're doing is good. And I think it's okay to be able to say, I wasn't able to locate that yet. I may be able to, and I may not. I'm really not sure, because what we really need to do right now is we've got to build accountability with not just the public, but with ourselves. And, you know, we all have a part in this. And, you know, part of that's going to be what Shanae, you know, does for us. Anyway, I want to close that with bringing back the controls and the guidelines in a clear, actionable result, as you mentioned, Chair Hebner, sooner than later before the end of the year, just so that we know we all know and we have confidence that we're on the right path and that we are moving in the direction that we want. I think would be really important. And then, you know, the rest of it will come. But just being able to say, you know what, I have full confidence because I've seen what our plan is. I see how we're going to move forward in a way that is different than what we actually were doing before. I think that, you know, with our public, with our employees, everybody needs to feel comfortable with we are going in the right direction to build trust and to move our agency forward in a way that we never have. So those are my comments, but I am very supportive of that. I don't know if that was a motion to bring that back.
Do we need, I don't think we need a motion, it's just direction. And
Okay,
the
well-
reason I said the first of the year is because we're so jam-packed. And in fact, we're going to be postponing the next item to another meeting. So we're jam-packing all of the agendas, but we'll bring it as soon as we possibly can, because I think it's something that's needed for sure.
And if it could be something, I know it gets weird with the holidays and everything, but if it could be something that we could just say, here's a check-in, here's what we're doing. We don't have it all finalized yet. I think it would probably make many of the board members feel comfortable that, again, we're moving in the direction that we all want.
We're progressing in that
Yes,
direction.
thank
Very
you.
good. Our final speaker is Ms. Maxon.
Thank you. Mario almost answered my question. Looking forward, completely a forward-looking question. I used to work for the second largest healthcare company in the US. We operated in 34 states, thousands and thousands of contracts. You can imagine the complexities. We always had to show contractual obligation, that we achieved the contractual obligations to our clients with a push button, an immediate response. Will this system in the future, because our clients are the taxpayers, have that ability to show achievement of contractual obligation? And what is the projected date for that availability? Thank you.
What we need to do is, it depending the character of the contract, but capital is our majority of our contracts. We are going to be working on also on setting up a specific group that will work on closeouts. Sometimes closeout of contracts is neglected in many agencies, in the aspect that sometimes you finish, let's say you did the ribbon cutting, but there's still so much more work that needs to be done to close out a contract. And yes, the punch list, and then go and do, if there's going to be addendums, and it's not just on, even so we talked about the DVE program somewhat being in pause, but there's so many agency requirements that sometimes it may not even be contractual or monetary, but it may be just that we fulfill the deliverables that the agencies are funding us, we're asking us to do. So we will be focusing also on an effort on closeouts. I can tell you that in my past life at Caltrans, that became an entire endeavor. We had to create a whole unit for closeouts. So yes, we will be looking into focusing on closing out contracts and having all the files in the right place.
And do we have a projected date for that? Because contracts can be open and ongoing along with being closed out, but obligations to be reported out remain the same. So is there a date for that ability to be in place?
Clint?
So, yeah, right now we're still doing that analysis. What I'm looking at is trying to do it in phased approach, right? So yes, we want a huge system, press a button, spit it all out. That we know takes time. We're in the middle of the gap analysis, wrapping that up. Then we do system requirements, procurement, implementation. In the meantime, like Mario mentioned, we just finished interviews for a consultant services position within the program project management group. That person will be responsible to be working with the project managers and overseeing all of the task orders. What that means is, what were the deliverables? Were they met? Are we tracking both the time frame and the dollars and budgets? And so we will be starting to track those a lot closer and have those ongoing reporting. That's what I've asked is, hey, where are we at on every one of these contracts? What's coming up? Start looking ahead, right? For those, so that position will help a lot. We're also making some internal changes to help track that. But in terms of a system to be able to press the button, that's probably a little longer term. So we're going to be making steps towards that goal. That goes along with the project management system that we're doing the same thing, right? That'll have a comprehensive project management system, all of our projects in there with resource loaded schedules. Again, you press that button, right, and see where exactly the projects are on your budget and your estimate to complete. We're implementing things so that we can get some of that information in the near term and track those. But in terms of a comprehensive system implementation, you're likely looking 2 years out. As we learned before, the last one to do is just go procure something that hasn't really been looked at a holistic view and make sure it ties into our accounting system, our contract system, our DBE tracking system, and make sure that all that's integrated. So and with HR too.
Oh, good. All right. Okay. Thank you for the discussion. Thank you for your work, both Courtney, Shanae, and everybody who's up there. We really appreciate. And all these responses, I think, gives us all an understanding of so much that's happening now with the team and correcting some of the problems that we've seen in all of these audits. None of these audits have all turned up things that are, they're awful. And it's very upsetting that that's what happened with this agency, but it did. And now we're on the right track. We've got a lot to look forward to, and we'll follow up with progress reports as well. So this is October 10th. We would normally have one more board meeting, but we're going to have 3 more board meetings. All right. So we're not going to have the next item, number 5. We're going to move that, I think, to the next meeting, which is going to be October 24th. Then the special closed session meeting for general counsel interviews is confirmed for October 30th at 9 a.m. And then the next day, October 31st, we're coming back again at 9 a.m. for a board meeting. So this meeting is concluded and we are adjourned. Bye.